and welcome. Today's conversation is about how to cast influencers. I'm going to give you everyone a moment just to join and log in. We've just gone live. In this conversation, we're going to chat about trends, the how-tos, the whys of influencer marketing. If you're new to Backstage content, welcome. During the pandemic, we launched the Slate, where we dive into topics that our actors and our creator audiences want to know more about. We know influencers and user-generated content are huge right now, and we're very excited to have you guys here today and this amazing panel of ladies to discuss all things influencer. Let me see if we've kind of got people that are joining. People probably trickle on in as we chat. So let's get started. I would love to do a quick round robin to introduce ourselves to the audience. I'll start. I'm Christine McKenna-Torella. I'm a casting director with over 10 years experience in a variety of mediums, ranging from commercials, reality TV, theater, and film. And I started my career casting real people commercials like 10 years ago, before the term influencer was a thing, but I was doing real people casting. I'm fascinated with all things casting tech, and here at Backstage, I am the New York casting specialist. I work on a number of content and casting development projects. Who would like to go next?
I can go. I'm Tammy Neely. I'm the Vice President of Communications and Talent Relations with Find Your Influence. We are an influencer marketing technology platform based in Scottsdale, Arizona. We also have a division called FYI Talent Management, which I lead, where we manage a series of social media influencers and all of the opportunities that come in for them to work with different brands and partnerships. And I'm excited to be here today and answer some questions and bring this group up to speed on my experiences and what I know about influencer marketing. So thanks, Christine, for including me today.
Great.
I can go. Hi, I'm Lindsay Glickstein. My company is Starlicity. I founded it. And I represent talent from reality TV to influencers to Miss USAs to people in some Netflix films, all different kinds of talent, a very diverse roster. It's more boutique. So I would love to tell you more about everything that I know and share my knowledge with you. And like Christine, I have a variety of things in my background. So I've done everything from casting to production to being an agent for TV, film, commercials, etc. So I'm a really good resource to all of those things.
Fantastic. Brianne?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Hi, everyone. My name is Brianne, or Bree Thomas. I'm a freelance social media and influencer strategist. I have nearly 10 years experience in digital and social strategy, working at both agencies, big and small, as well as both on the brand side. I've been working with influencers throughout the course of my social career, but have spent the last 2 years or so really prioritizing influencers as a core focus of my work stream. Outside of social media, I'm also a filmmaker and producer, so I also bring that experience and background into the way that I approach influencers and casting. So really, really excited to chat today.
I think it's my cue. My name is Jasmine Tatunchi. I am a creative strategist and digital producer. I've worked with companies like Snap, Warner Brothers, Digital, Hollister Co., Tinder, and most recently Flight House, which is the #1 entertainment brand on TikTok. I also started at TikTok in 2019 as it was starting to bubble up. So I definitely have grown into truly loving TikTok in a whole new way. And because of my entertainment industry background, I always come from things from a storytelling perspective. And I think that that is the crux of what a lot of influencer marketing is. And it's the one part of it that people kind of will forget when they're doing it. So yeah, thanks, Christine. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Love this panel. We've been wanting to do a conversation about influencers for a while on Backstage, so I'm super excited. And just if people aren't familiar, Backstage is the world's largest database of global talent. We have all types of talent ranging from actors, models, dancers, kids, real people. And our mission is to connect talent with opportunity and creators with talent. So we lead the industry with our casting calls, our standing editorial, and we started free workshops and classes like this called The Slate during the pandemic. These conversations are catered to actors and creators, and there's a free library on YouTube. So subscribe over to Backstage on YouTube so you never miss one of these conversations. We have seen an explosion of user-generated content castings, right? Especially in the last year during the pandemic on our site, but in general, it's just been a growing trend year after year. We have some influencers and micro-influencers on our platform, and our sweet spot is definitely like camera-ready professional actors and models that are ideal for UGC real person casting needs. To start us off, around this time last year, I must have read a dozen articles that were all the same theme, from DigiDay to Adweek to New York Times, that the pandemic would be the end of the influencer, right? And social media, like branding as we kind of know it. And since then, TikTok went from being almost banned in the US to a major force in the social media space with over 2 billion users. And SAG-AFTRA just came out with a unique build your own contract type thing for influencers. So you know when the unions start like taking you seriously that you've made it. So I'd argue social media and user-generated content style advertisements are here to stay. I'd love to hear from all of you. Why are influencers so appealing to brands? And of course, most importantly, to the consumers that you work with or that you hope to get to, right?
I could answer that. I think the construct of celebrity has changed a lot due to influencers. And, you know, while there is sort of that Instagram model sort of sector of TikTok, the unique thing about TikTok was that you can go overnight and grab an audience, which is obviously very appealing to brands. You also, the number of followers don't necessarily correlate to the level of quote unquote hype that you have. So when you're in the middle of your own virality, it's the best time to capitalize on the fact that people are taking notice of you as a brand. And your brand doesn't have to be sort of one thing. I've seen plenty of actors create their own space on TikTok where it's basically this safe space for them to show their skills as a storyteller. So of course, brands want to deal with someone who has an audience and is a storyteller as well. So that's my answer for that.
And I think to go back to what you were saying, Christine, about how a year ago at this time, the media was reporting that, you know, influencers were going to see the end, like they weren't going to, the space wasn't just going to grow. And I think those authors were looking at it from maybe the travel influencer perspective, because that stopped, right? Like they weren't traveling to these exotic locations because it wasn't safe to do that. But what happened is that brands doubled down. They said, who are the creators who take the most beautiful photos, who, you know, do it themselves? And then whether it's creating branded content on social media, like traditional influencer marketing, or saying, hey, we know you're an amazing photographer. Could we send you product and lighting kits and all of this? And then can we get on a Zoom call like this and direct the photo shoot? So these influencers who weren't creating this user-generated content to hand off to a brand to use before turned into those production houses. Like they had time, they understood how to shoot content beautifully. And so several of the talent that I managed in 2020 specifically, I would say there was a good balance of kind of the traditional brand work that they do, that they would post to their social feeds, but also they were filming and producing content for brands directly during the pandemic, which I thought was an awesome pivot to ensure that, you know, they could maintain their income, but also solving a problem for brands who couldn't get into a studio. And I don't know if, I mean, you guys all likely remember last April, May, and June, like people couldn't get masks. Like we were literally in lockdown. So if you could just send something to someone's home and have them produce it and you could direct it through Zoom, it was the best solution for everyone.
And I want to piggyback on that, what Tammy said too. I also noticed that a lot of like the fashion influencers, that was a big thing. So like when they were writing these articles, you know, nobody was caring about your outfit of the day when your outfit of the day is sweats. So people had to pivot their content, and anyone who is a legitimate content creator and is telling a story and is working on creating viable content, whether it be on TikTok, whether it be, in video, whether it be in like reels, whatever it is that is your strong suit and you can create content. I think you just had to figure out how to pivot what your like expertise is, what your interests are during the pandemic, and then thrive from there. And I've had some clients that were able to do that extremely well. And I have some other clients that kind of fell flat and just got frustrated and didn't want a photographer in their home, let's just say, or didn't want to shoot their own content because they didn't have someone in their home. They don't live with a roommate. They don't have a spouse. And so they were like, how am I supposed to do this way? It's not as easy as like for someone who has someone in home to shoot for them. So I think it was an individual case by case basis, but I think we can all agree that this industry is not dead and is actually thriving at the moment. And for me, I've been lucky enough to have, since the pandemic is obviously getting better, things have really amped up, and I think people are more willing to spend money from a brand perspective because they're seeing that what they're doing is working and it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, I just want to build a little bit upon that as well, and kind of what you all had touched upon for brands. It's such a great solve, especially in the pandemic. When we worked with influencers before, maybe we'd be flying out additional production support, maybe we'd be going there in person and supporting them. And suddenly everything had to be done remote, and we had to kind of prioritize these creators who are true content creators, who are used to shooting, editing, directing everything themselves. And we were prepared for that. But I think what you talked a little bit about, Lindsay, is like not every influencer, not every creator is fully prepared for that pivot. And that's totally okay. It's like judging these things on a case by case basis. But what it really put into perspective for me and the teams I work with is like being able to see clearly which creators possess that skill set ahead of time, or having those conversations and setting those expectations early, so you don't get into those situations where the talent is frustrated. That's the last thing anybody wants. So like understanding how to identify that ahead of time was for me a huge win over the course of the pandemic and working with creators.
Yeah, at Backstage, we kind of pivoted into what you guys brand wise needed, right? So like you needed to understand if our actors had self-recording abilities at home. And so we made that a section of the profile. You needed to be able to like remotely audition safely. We created a virtual platform that if you need to interview someone or, kind of feel them out before you hire them, you can do that. And we added another thing of payments, which, you can get an asset and get the payment directly on Backstage. So, pivoting was just so, I kind of hate the word pivoting, right? I'm so overhearing it as like a word, but at the same time was so essential to what everyone was doing. I just want to remind, if anyone has any questions, we're going to get to questions at the end. And if you want to put it in the Q&A, myself and my colleague will look those over, and we'll definitely get to them at the end, guys, for everyone that is kind of listening along here. Great. So maybe Brianna and Jasmine, you might be able to answer this for me. As a casting director myself, I'm used to really prescriptive casting calls on the commercial end, right? Kind of more traditional casting, like breakdowns with very rich character descriptions. And my perception of influencer casting is really casting a wider net for what you might need. So the types of castings that I see, and I really just made this up this morning. So, casting a pregnant woman who works in the wellness space, who has over 100K followers, maybe is a mommy blogger, but not necessary. And it's for like a mattress brand, right? Like that's the type of thing that I'm seeing. And I'm so curious, kind of the chicken and the egg of that. How do you build your influencer casting? How does it work? How do you figure out how you're going to reach out to your audience and who the right influencer might be for you?
Yeah.
Oh,
you can go first. Go first.
Okay.
No, seriously, girl, you got it.
Sure. So for me, where it first comes down to, because I'm at an agency most of the time and then working with my clients will come in with the campaign, the objectives they want to hit, and kind of the general budget. And then from there, I'll be able to start to determine, okay, who are the types of people we're considering? What's the right mix of folks that are going to kind of help us hit this campaign objective? So let's say it's a campaign that's promoting a new smartphone and, you know, we really want to talk to Gen Z. So immediately I'm going to be like, okay, for me, TikTok would be the platform. So I'm definitely going to begin recommending TikTok creators. And then from there, what I like to do is actually set up 4 types of category criteria that actually help determine the type of influencers and creators I'm going after. And that would be like a mix of brand alignment, you know, are they already a fan of the product and brand in question? Program fit, do they fit the particular passion point we're pursuing? So in the case of a smartphone, like, are they regularly shooting and creating video content? Are they, you know, telling strong stories with the content that they share? Content alignment, aesthetically and creatively, would they naturally fulfill the content ask that I'm looking for? And then audience fit, do they have the right gender breakdown, age breakdown, whatever that is? And then I kind of use all these criteria to begin my search. And from there, for me, I don't know how important it is to other people, but I really like to consider like the mix of people and how they all fit together. So it's not just like one off who are the best fits everywhere, but how do they fit collectively as a group, so that when I create the proposal for the clients and I say, here are the people I'm thinking we should cast, they kind of all fit together, and create like a strong grouping that maybe have different pluses or minuses in different categories ultimately.
Yeah. So I actually come from a different perspective than this. So because I'm being able to create the strategy for both like paid media, whitelist, along with doing like an influencer marketing campaign, I always come from the strategy first and what the creative is, also like what is actually trending with the ecosystem. Now, obviously I'm pretty TikTok and YouTube and Snapchat focused. So a lot of my sort of casting is going to be within that world. Also, another thing is like, if I notice that somebody has a lot of hype, I will create a strategy around that person because I know that it's in the best interest of the brand in order for them to align themselves with this person. Obviously, all of these brands need to approve of the people that are representing them. Also, if you have anything problematic or even could be conceived as problematic, get rid of it if you want to get your brand deals. Otherwise, you're only going to be able to work with certain brands. Because I mean, a lot of these bigger brands are looking through everything, trying to find something that could be quote unquote cancelable. Also, don't get canceled. That's great advice, really. But
I deal with that a lot because obviously representing reality TV personalities right now, we're in such a cancel culture and it's such a touchy subject, and everyone has to be careful what they put out there content wise, as well as in the press and everything else that they're doing. And I think me, I totally agree with you because I'm the one who has to give them advice because I'm like a 360 manager. So I basically also handle, you know, their publicity and things like that because they are TV personalities. So there's a lot of things that align with that I need to handle for them. And so, yes, that has been a huge thing right now because anything you say, whether it's like on film, like maybe it's on the show, but the show hasn't aired yet. And then you have all these brand deals in the works and then they see the show and they're like, that was not edited in your favor, which it may not have even been what they said or how they said it. But if it was, regardless, that's what's out there. So you have to be careful with the content you create, the content you put out there, your media interviews, everything that you do from a creator perspective and a TV personality or anything, because it's just causing so much difficulty in these times.
Totally. And Lindsay, like, this is why people like you are so important. I can't tell you how many fresh off like the algorithm, the creators I've met, right, that are amazing because there's this like sweet spot, right, where they're still like human, so to speak, right? And it's beautiful to see, but it's also scary because you can get taken advantage so easily, number one. Number two, anything that you say is going to be held accountable to a highly sensitive society. So people like Lindsay are in your best interest, who understand the industry, they understand public relations, and if anything happens, they guide you through what you have to do in order to A, take accountability, or B, clarify what the misconception is, because that is the brand killer. Beyond anything.
Yeah, I mean, and it's crazy because I represent talent from The Bachelor and Bachelorette, as well as Housewives. And those are two of the shows right now that are like the most controversial of everything. but I tend to take on clients from those shows and the franchises that are not the ones who are typically the most, they're more of the brand friendly talent as opposed to the controversial ones or the ones getting into huge trouble. But you just never know. Like something could happen to anybody. And we're seeing that more and more. So I think a lot of people on your side come to me for talent that they know are very brand friendly, very clean image. And from coming from the talent agency background, I think that I have a pretty good eye in who is going to fit those categories and what the brand side is going to think. So I put on my like commercial agent hat from when I was a commercial agent. And I'm like, okay, what is it that brands would want to see? Would they want to see the girl who's flipping tables? Probably not, unless it's like some type of controversial, product.
Oh, but she's an icon.
But not every brand is going to align with that. And they may not even watch Housewives. And they might say, people will say to me, are your girls like that? If they've never watched the show and they have no idea, they're just like, oh, a real housewife? Are they like that? And I'm like, absolutely not. They're the absolute opposite of that. But unless you watch, you wouldn't know.
I actually have a question, Lindsay. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, kind of going back to the original question that Christine asked both of Brienne and Jasmine of like, how do you handle casting? On the talent manager side, what I've seen as the most successful is kind of combination of what you both said. So Brienne, where you're saying like, put the whole group of creators together, how do they tell the story? And Jasmine backing into it from the strategy side, where we've seen the most successful campaigns is when a brand has come and said, here's what we're thinking through doing. We really want to work with you. We have these other set of creators. What could perform best for your audience? This is because when you bring the creator in, now they're more invested. Instead of you being prescriptive and saying, we want you to create content around this new coffee mug, show you using it during breakfast hours. You know what I mean? Like when you're that prescriptive, you're going to get X results. When you bring the creator in to say, here's what we're thinking, and you really show your value to them of, your audience better than we do. How would your audience respond? And then the creator can come up with ideas and the brand's like, oh my gosh, we never thought of that. Now look what else you're getting for that, that fee that you paid. So bringing the creator in early into the process has driven the most results that so
and I have a kind of a follow-up for everybody then, and I know that Tammy, you have a platform in particular, but what and Jasmine, you hinted at this, but there's a lot of tracking and metrics and assessing the influencer. The influencers are under a very critical gaze, right, to be productive and to make sure that the posts and the work that they're doing really is engaged with. What are you using out there to do that? How are you tracking success?
So for us, it's really dependent on the brand. Where are they within the marketing funnel? Are they trying to create brand awareness, or are they trying to drive swipe ups and clicks to a landing page? Are they giving the creator a unique promo code where they can track how it's performed? So I know saying everything's different doesn't really answer your question, but I think most often when brands have come to work with the creators on our roster, they're really excited about the engagement rate. And the engagement rate is the number of likes and the number of comments. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't count the number of DMs because only the creator sees that, right? There's no insight into how much back and forth is there, but there is so much value in those DMs. So when a campaign wraps, we send over screenshots of how the stories performed. You know what I mean? You can get those within your insights page. We will send over generally about 1 week showing how the in-feed post has performed. But then I always ask our creators, can you send me some screenshots of some DMs that you got where it's somebody's reaching out to say, hey, where did you buy this? Or how long have you been using it before you posted about it? Asking these questions, that's where the value is. And we show the brands that. And so many times they'll come back and work with our creators again because we're giving additional insight that I don't have access to that. I can't log into my creator's Instagram account and see that, but I'm asking the creator, send me something if you have it that's of value that would kind of just wow the brand, and let's over deliver that way. But short answer to your question, it's really the engagement and really just the engagement. And yes, everyone wants beautiful content. So that's kind of the price of admission.
One interesting thing related to metrics is that I had a campaign that people contacted me for skincare, and it's a very high-end skincare that had a very specific target demographic of their audience that they wanted to reach. And so they had me obviously send the typical like Instagram screenshots that people will ask for, which are just for the audience who doesn't know, that's just like basically your insights and your audience and anything you can get as far as views. And that doesn't measure necessarily like obviously it does for the stories, but for everything else, it's like, you know, you don't have every little thing as far as that goes. So the platform Silo, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but they provided us with an entirely different set of numbers and demographics. So basically with the numbers that we presented, they were like, oh, these are not the right demographic for us. But then they looked at these from this other platform that is a lot more technical and has like all the ins and outs of what they need on the brand side. And they moved forward with a campaign. So we were really excited because we were shocked when we saw that her target audience was a higher age range than what is showing when anybody else looks at it. And it's the real data that's updated a lot more and a lot quicker. And there's a lot more data than just the basic numbers. So that was something that was like really interesting recently. And I agree with Tammy in the sense of we provide them the same thing. If there's any added value that people have brought after the post or like corresponding with their audience, writing back to DMs, answering their messages that they write on the post, or even just, you know, if they're on a television show and they mention something, we share that, or like anything that we have that can show, and typically it results in working with them again. So I think it's a great thing for people to think about. And it's not just like this campaign and this post, it's like also showing your audience that this is a product that you like, that you use, and it's organic, and it's not something that you're just doing for a paycheck. And I think that's what separates a good creator from one that's obviously just looking for like a paid campaign.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk a little bit about pacing, right? So in commercial casting, the traditional space, one of the challenges for me was pace, right? You know, you're 24 hours turnaround, you get the breakdown to casting room, right? And the project would be very much in flux right until the end. Brianne, can you talk about pacing a little bit and your timeline when you start a project like that, when you start an influencer project?
Yeah, so in the most ideal worlds, you know, I'll have a total of like 2 months to get everything set up. And personally, I work with an international global client. So it's like we need that timeline so that we can have back and forth, have certain meetings, what have you. And we tend to work with global influencers. So not just influencers in the US, but ones based in UK, Sweden, Italy, whatever. So like having that extra time is really, really important. And through that process, you know, we'll do everything from establishing the influencer selection criteria, gaining alignment internally and with the client, then through the influencer search process, which, you know, again, I work with difficult clients, and it can take a few rounds to go through those discussions and really find out why they don't like certain people, who they prefer, you know, is there budget for those folks, whatever. So there is a lot of that back and forth before I even reach out to the talent. So that takes up the majority of the time. Then in terms of talent outreach, you know, I like to set aside, if, let's say I'm trying to cast 5 or 6 influencers. I like to set aside like a week to 2 weeks to have these initial conversations where I'll do the outreach, have the initial briefings if they're represented. You know, I'll have the direct conversations with their managers and agents before having the creative conversations with the talent. Then we'll have about another, let's say, you know, 4 or 5 days where we bring in that collaborative process that you guys were mentioning before, where there's that, okay, here's what we're thinking, here's like our creative brief. Now we want you guys to come back to us and like really build upon that. What are your ideas? Like, how does this timeline look? But also like, do you agree with the deliverables? Are you thinking like, what are you thinking for your TikToks? Does this make sense to you? How would you build upon that further? So we might have a little bit of a back and forth period there before we actually move into the production. And then depending on the lift, of course, of the campaign, that can be anywhere. If it's just like a quick TikTok where they're using a branded effect, that's a pretty simple lift. That might only be, you know, 3 or 4 days. To a very intense product forward production, that's going to be somewhere like with all the edit rounds and stuff like that, 2 or 3 weeks. So it's really going to depend on like the level of fidelity, the number of deliverables, and ultimately how big the campaign is. Again, this is going to be very particular for me because I tend to work with global, massive clients with big budgets. So the timeline is going to be possibly longer than most folks.
Mm-hmm. And I'd love, I know that all of you ladies come from a slightly different perspective here, but when you're building a contract together, either as a talent manager or on the brand side, what are the considerations about what's being asked of the influencer, usage, that type of thing? How do you guys build that out? I know it's hard to do it without an exact example, but if you can give me some basic idea about how we build the contract together and work together.
So on the talent manager side, I'm not building the contract. The brands or the agencies are sending it over for review. And the very first thing I do, I hit that search bar and I search for the word perpetuity, because so many people want to license your content for all time. And that's a deal breaker. You can use it for a set period of time. And if you want to use it for perpetuity, I mean, you're going to be paying out of pocket. So just a quick note, I'm always searching for the word perpetuity spelled correctly and incorrectly throughout the contract. I want to make sure no one sneaks it in anywhere outside of the clause where I would normally read it. So that's just my quick note.
And coming from the talent manager perspective as well, obviously deliverables and exclusivity and usage and all of that is huge. And one of the most annoying things for me on my side of the table is that I've been getting a lot of contracts lately that are trying to slip in some of these things, and perpetuity is one of them that obviously we look at immediately, especially coming from my background where it's like in commercial usage, you have to be so careful with that. But in influencer partnerships, it's the same thing. It's like, you don't want somebody who is going to use it on billboards or is going to use it for anything in store or is going to use it on, I've been getting a lot where it's like on multiple platforms. So it'll be, for example, they'll want to use it on different websites, and it's not just the owned and operated website of the brand. It's also all of their retailers and all of their affiliates. And a lot of the talent absolutely will not do it. And they're like, I don't want my face, especially if they're, an influencer with a large audience. They don't want their face all over Walmart and all over Target and all over these things unless they're getting compensated accordingly, which typically in these deals, they view it as like, oh, we're just going to also put it on the retailers. And you're like, wait, you're not going to put it on the retailers unless you're paying to put it on the retailers. So I think that these are all the things that, obviously from our side, we have to look at. And another thing lately that everyone wants is paid media, whitelisting, etc. And so that to me is an added cost. And so a lot of times people try to think that, they can get away with just putting it into the agreement. And I'm similar to Tammy, where people send me the contract. I don't create the influencer contract with the brand. And then I go through it and, obviously redline and decide what are deal breakers and go back and forth. And there's our negotiation after the rate is done. So that's what I would say.
I guess I'll add to this. We don't, on the brand side, at least even like the agency side, I'm never the one that's actually drawing up the contract for the brand. Usually the brand's like the one doing it, but I always have to be the one that's like negotiating it with the manager. So obviously I've learned a thing or two. I've never seen perpetuity on a brand contract yet. And that just might be because they're using other verbiage for it. Most of the contracts that I work with have a usage limit. Usually you're going to get pushback on that usage limit from the talent managers because obviously they don't want you taking advantage of that. The other one to watch out for is exclusivity. At least with TikTok, it's like a lot of these brands are just straight up not looking for you posting like competitors. Usually it's never you like any brand, it's usually just like their direct competitors. So like if you're posting, I don't know, like Rihanna's like Fenty one day and then you're posting Milk the other day, you might have like some issues with that or whatever. So that's something to probably watch out for, at least contract wise. Besides that, I think all the other ladies sort of explained it pretty well. I do want to go back to just the question of whether or not, like, as when you're devising brand strategy with the brand, right? I think it's really dependent on the and getting like sort of the measures of success. It's really dependent on what kind of influencer marketing that you're doing. I think like if you're doing an influencer, like true influencer marketing, where you're doing it like a trend-based marketing and you're doing it across a bunch of influencers page, that's going to require a whole different lens than you trying to source content for maybe a brand account. And that's usually a little bit easier, because if it's not going to be showing up on their page itself, it's usually better, like you have more of a chance, at least from the brand perspective, to negotiate down, because you don't have to use someone's page. And usually the creators like that more, because they don't want to like fill their page with a bunch of brandy stuff. They want to, if they can get their bag without having it on their platform, they'll take it. But that's just one way that like I've noticed that brands are sort of differentiating sort of the deliverables. The other thing is like sometimes we do package deals, right? So if I know that we have an influencer campaign coming up and I know that this person would be the perfect fit for that concept, I will negotiate in that along with the post on their page, along with the post on the actual brand TikTok, right? So it's like things like that that just sort of change the way that your pricing and your sort of technicalities sort of play. Yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, Jessie Grossman, who is the head of WIM, which is an amazing women's in media influencer media marketing group. She has this amazing TikTok where she did a "Don't put your media kit." You like your don't put prices on a media kit, right? And it was just so insightful. She was like, you need to be thinking about usage and what the buyout is, exactly how many deliverables you have. Like it all just builds a very different contract. And so you don't have something that you do for something, you have to know so much more behind that. And so if there are influencers and creators or want to be actors to influencers, that we have definitely an audience here at Backstage. That's something to think about, that you really have to do a little bit of homework about that. Don't jump to sharing, because there used to be an old adage of kind of, this leads into the next kind of section about money a little bit. So the old adage was so many followers equaled a certain kind of baseline of what you would get paid. Does that still really exist, or have we broken that kind of blockbuster?
I think on TikTok, that's the only place that it gets a little messy, because it is so possible for you to have like 1 million followers, but each one of your videos at that moment are grossing like 10 million views. Like that's a valuable, whether you have 10 million followers or not, kind of thing. So it's like things like that, like your relevancy, I've noticed does seriously affect pricing. Also, people who are quote unquote legacies on TikTok, that means the people that started on Musical.ly had like a bit of a consistent fan base at first. Some of them have, I'm not even kidding you, tens of millions of followers, yet their stuff isn't doing so well right now. So brands are pricing them even lower. And that's just like an unfortunate reality about at least TikTok and like YouTube right now, where like your relevancy has just as much merit as your number of followers. But I'm sure you can say something else, Brian.
No, I think that's really, really good insight. And I think also looking to people who are really growing rapidly as well, like being able to identify who those people are before they reach their peak, you're obviously going to get a much better deal and have those conversations than if you wait, even a month to have those conversations. So if you see these creators who are on the come up, it's like that's the perfect time to have those conversations, because they want to grow too, and that's when you're both going to find a rate that you both feel really, really good about, then maybe further down the line. I think when speaking also about rate, we kind of touched upon this earlier, but with regards to exclusivity, I think there's something to be said as well with the category. Certain categories are going to require a higher fee. So for example, like I said, if I'm working with a global smartphone brand, then the exclusivity category is smartphone brands. That's like a huge ask when comparing just like let's say mascaras only or something like this. And that's going to affect the fee, and everybody needs to be on the same page as that. And the creators as well, which I'm finding more and more creators are understanding that, but knowing other smartphone brands in your content, even organically, So.
And I would say too, going there, I manage a creator on TikTok. It is a golden retriever who is a therapy dog. And so he's so niche with almost, I think he just passed 2 million followers. I mean, there is Starbucks, there is a program on ABC that wants to work with him because he's so niche and his followers are super engaged. I mean, there are so many, there are comments on comments on comments. And because he's niche, and because of his following and the engagement, his rates are higher because brands know that working with him really produces results. They get in front of the exact target audience they're trying to reach versus putting a television commercial on, CBS or ABC.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
I have
no, no.
a friend who has like 600,000 followers on Instagram, and her reels completely blew up out of nowhere during the pandemic, and she was getting like 6 million views from videos that she would create on TikTok, post on TikTok. They didn't do particularly well on TikTok, but she'd lift the ones that were somewhat, higher than the others, but they're still not like millions or anything of the sort, and put them on reels, and they blew up. And they were getting, so with rates, with all of that, it's like, then you're like, well, I can give you a rate for photos, I can give you a rate for stories, but her rate is going to be like triple when it comes to the reels, because the value that you're getting for the content that she's not only creating, but all of these views. And do we know where they're coming from? We don't. And we're shocked, and we're like, how is this happening? But obviously you want to ride the wave as long as you possibly can, in order to make sure that your talent is, monetizing. But again, none of us know when or if or how with numbers. Like, the algorithm just changed so rapidly.
Yeah, and to your point, actually, and Tammy, for the record, when I was working at TikTok, right, we had this breakdown of this was early days, guys, so don't get too excited. I'm not giving you any algorithm secrets here, but like, we break down the different kinds of content that there is, and specifically comedy, animal, and feel good animal was a huge category that was untapped. That included DIY, also had a big category as well. So what she's hitting on right now is leaning into your niche is so important. And beyond just that, like, I know we were talking about, being brand safe and all of that, but it's also, at least with Gen Z, right? This is not true for all platforms, because I think Instagram is more polished and pristine than TikTok is. Gen Z values authenticity so much that, like, you could literally be either problematic. Look at Tana Mojo, Trisha Paytas. Like, there's plenty of examples of these people that like have gotten in serious trouble, but yet they are so authentic to who they are, they still manage to keep their audience. So if you yourself are having to sort of become less authentic as a result of trying to get your bag, I would think twice about it, because people can sniff inauthenticity on TikTok so well. They don't like being advertised to. So if you are going to be advertising, you have a higher standard to make content, just like genuinely good content, which is, in my experience, hit or miss with creators. Doesn't matter if you give them an example video that breaks down exactly how you're supposed to do it. At the end of the day, your power is in this other person's hands. And creators, in my experience, are hit or miss with whether or not they want to be involved or not. And sometimes, honestly, they just want someone to tell them what to do, and that's totally fine. So it's so tricky because there's no consistency across the board. You just have to treat every case uniquely, kind of thing.
Okay, I'd love to get to some, thank you for that. And I'm building on what you've just said, and some of the conversation we've had today. I want to get to some of our questions from the viewers. So one anonymous person has asked, is there a way a company or a person can clean up past posts quickly? think that came from the cancellation and authenticity conversation.
Delete them. Just do it.
Just delete.
Because they're the only way for them to looking through your page, unless you're like a real like influencer. Maybe someone may have screen recorded it. I don't know, but like if you're small enough to be under the radar, you just delete it. Get it off the internet.
Yeah, perfect. Do you have any tips for smaller content creators and micro influencers? It's from Laura.
I mean, I can speak to that. Or Tamara, were you going to say something?
Go ahead.
I think one of the best things to do is to look at the marketplace and see what's a niche that you create or you have an interest in that maybe is something different than other people. And then I would look at other people in the space and other people who are successful in creating quality content and kind of get some ideas as to what's doing well, and then how to position yourself accordingly and make yourself obviously different, but what they're doing is working. So you're trying to figure out like how to build your audience. And now is harder than ever because like I was saying, the algorithms, you just never know. So you have to try out and see what your audience that you're building likes. Do they like reels? Do they like lives? Do they like Insta stories? Do they like more in the moment? Do they like more of a curated feed with a photographer? And not everyone has that same ask. I think everybody has a different audience and everybody has a different need. And I think it depends on the categories that you're in. Like if you're in like the family space and you're posting about your kids and you're posting about your day-to-day, well, it's great to be transparent with your audience. You know, you're a mom, you're having a tough day, your kids are screaming, they're crying, they're hanging on you, you didn't get to go run your errands, you didn't get to do your work. I mean, these are all things that people can relate to. And I think ultimately being relatable, whether you have 5 followers or 5 million, is like of the utmost importance and being authentic. So I would say that for a creator, just kind of look at other people and see what they're doing and then figure out how you can be different.
I would echo that a bit. And I would say that I looked at the clock when my trigger word was set in here. We got 48 minutes into a conversation about influencers before the word authenticity or authentic came up. No offense, Jasmine, but that is my trigger word because so many influencers are like, I'm so authentic. And I'm like, you are dolled up right now. Like authentic is showing up, be relatable, be yourself. You guys, I used dry shampoo today. I didn't wash my hair. I just showed up, right? And so I think for these micro influencers, just show up. You don't have to be your best self. You're going to trip, you're going to fall, but practice, keep going at it and show up for yourself. Because like Lindsay said, there might be 5 people that you relate to or 5 million people that relate to you, but just keep showing up as yourself because you'll build your audience that way. You don't want a bunch of people following you because, oh, look at all the work I did to show up authentically today. Like that's work and that will be exhausting and that will wear you down and you will move on from that. But if you show up as your real true self every day, don't claim to be authentic because then it feels like you're not being authentic. But again, that was my trigger word. No offense, Jasmine, but I was really happy that we got that far in the discussion until we said it. But I think that that's true for influencers at any level, where you're just beginning or whether you're established, just keep showing up.
I've got another
and just to respond to that, when I say the word authentic, I actually mean the actual definition of authenticity, which is not what Tammy's describing right now. That's not showing up not showing up, like putting your best foot forward, which means putting on your makeup and all of that. That's not necessarily authentic unless you love makeup. Then go off, sis, put on your makeup, do whatever makes you feel good. So when I say the word authenticity, and I'm sorry it's been sort of screwed up by influencer culture, I truly mean that if you are not yourself, everyone will be able to tell, kind of thing.
That's a great marriage of the two perspectives, I think. So I've got a casting coordinator and producer who's working on a small film production. How and where should I search for my influencer for a casting call? I'll jump in for a second and say, I know Laura Richner, who asked this question, probably be great if we had like a little bit of a breakdown to understand exactly who you're looking for. But ladies, where would you recommend someone starts looking for an influencer that they're interested in working with for a film?
I think it really depends what your your real sort of needs are for this particular role. If you look at Addison Rae and she's all that, right? I don't think anybody would have known that she was going to be an actress because none of her content sort of like alluded to that. But then there are people like Rich Caroline, right? She's this TikToker that has literally used TikTok as character development. There was also this person called Rosa who character developed around one particular character who happens to have an affinity for hot Cheetos and not putting your eyelashes in the right places. But all of these things, if you are looking for that character, can be found on TikTok, if people are presenting themselves in the way that they want to. So if you want to act, there's ways for you to act. But I know there are people that just straight up want an Addison Rae who could probably be taught how to act, right? And she has an insane audience, right? So that's valuable as well. So yeah, I feel like it's a tricky question.
I think that's a really great way to say that, because, for example, Addison Rae is a really good example. You're leaning into what they do best, right? You're leaning into you're really the guardrails of who that person is, and maybe the character they'd be playing are really close. So that's a good way, especially for a film production when you're going to be working with something scripted, to kind of lean into what they do best. Guys, I can't believe we're running out of time. I could talk to you guys all day, and I know that's a cliche, but I really feel like we've got some really great stuff. Okay. What kind of as a round robin to finish us, what is next for influencers, or what's exciting you in the business today?
I think it's exciting that people are more open to different kinds of clients and different people who, like we were saying, celebrities are the new influencers to a degree. Influencers are the new celebrity, I should say, because it's you can be anything you want. You can be who you want. And it's really cool to see that television personalities can use their influence for the greater good, or an influencer, a blogger, etc. And they can hit different kinds of platforms as far as whatever they believe in. So if it's a cause, for example, they can use it for the greater good with that cause. They can do campaigns centered around it. They can do content about sustainability and environment and all these different types of things. And I think it's really cool that things are changing and moving in that direction, that people can express who they are and what they want to do in different ways, and the brands are latching onto it. I'm working on a campaign right now about the vaccine, which at some point, vaccines might have been a taboo for people to talk about. And now it's it's a big pharmaceutical brand, and they want to talk about people who have gotten the vaccine and talking about, how they were affected and how this drug helped them after the campaign, after the shot, and then do a campaign about it. So I think that it's just everything is moving in different directions, and people are more open-minded to using influencers in different ways. And I think it's really cool with the new platforms that are coming, and with Reels and TikTok and all these things. It's you can do whatever you want and whatever works for you. And I think it allows more people to be able to monetize in a kind of oversaturated market, is a little bit how I felt before these new things were happening. And now I just feel this new energy, and I think it's great for everybody.
For me, I'm excited by the prospect of two things. One is approaching who we cast and how we cast them in unique ways. So not just thinking strictly, okay, I'm going to keep using the smartphone example. I'm only going to then work with people that show off tech, thinking outside of the box and being are there other categories and types of influencers who can actually bring this content to life in a smart and creative way that's going to go beyond our usual audience? I think for me, that's something that I'm really interested in exploring further with my clients, and getting them to understand that hey, it's worth trying something like this. It's worth working with a makeup influencer for a smartphone brand because she shoots her content on a smartphone. So isn't that a natural marriage? Pushing the clients to understand this is kind of something I'm looking forward to. Additionally, pursuing more longer term influencer relationships. So not just one-off campaign moments, but who is actually a great creative partner that we want to see that ourselves working with going forward, and how can we do both small campaigns and big tentpole moments, but that relationship is always being built upon. For me, these are the most important things I'm looking forward to.
I would say a couple of things for me. So recently I was excited to see that Nerf, the toy gun company, they had a casting call out for a chief TikTok officer. So they brought in an actual creator who loved Nerf and was always creating videos. And yes, it was a whole publicity thing. It got them tons of press, but they have a chief TikTok officer now. So someone who's focused on developing this new platform where their audience is already on anyways, and how can they help build strategies and programming around that. And then secondly, I'm really looking forward to seeing brands stick to their commitments that they made last summer in the aftermath of the George Floyd murder, committing to having more diversity, people of color, different body sizes, all of this. I'm seeing it still there. And I hope it continues. Not every brand is perfect, but I'm glad that this wasn't just we're going to do this for a couple of months and people are going to forget about it. But I'm really happy to see so much more diversity show up in campaigns.
Thank you.
Totally. Wait it. That is it, Tammy. In fact, I wish we had more time, because that's like a whole nother conversation that is so important. And it's so tricky because brands right now want numbers, but they also want POCs. And unfortunately, the truth is there is not enough POCs that can offer that. So it's about sticking to your guns and still fighting for what exactly is our duty to sort of push in the media landscape. And to that, right, I'm excited about the many possibilities that this new world order has brought us. I tell every single creator that I've worked with that you have this blessing right now. You have an audience, and that audience can do anything you want, whether that's a podcast, that's a shoe brand, that's you becoming a world famous actor. You have that power for the first time in our history. You have the power to crowdsource your audience and become more legitimate by way of finding your own tribe. So use this as an opportunity for you to find your own tribe. And that excites me, is being able to find someone for everyone to sort of relate to. Because I think for a really long time, to Tammy's point, there wasn't. And you do deserve to relate to someone in your exact form, the way that you are. So yeah, just super excited about everything.
And I've just dropped in the chat, the SAG-AFTRA agreement. We had a really great article on that at Backstage. We didn't really cover it today because not everyone's using it, and it's a build your own situation. So there's a lot of questions around SAG-AFTRA influence stuff, but really it's almost, you have to go to SAG-AFTRA with that particular contract and figure out what's right for your influencer. So we've got a really great article I've put in the chat. Ladies, how do we keep in touch with you? Obviously we are at Backstage Cast. Does anyone else want to share their handles?
We are at Find Your Influence.
I just added it to the chat, but it's Starlicity, StarlicityPRNY. And my website is starlicity.com.
Great.
Yeah, and for me, I'm briannethomas.com, or you can find me on Twitter, same handle, at briannethomas.
Great.
I'm at Jazzy2G on Instagram, or I would give you my TikTok handle, but there's, I don't know.
Don't do whatever you don't want to do. Keep that private if you want, Jasmine. Okay, perfect. Ladies, thank you so much. This time has flown. I sense a part 2 coming up maybe in a little while. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you guys for joining. I know lots of people have to hop off and do other stuff. So have a great day, and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.